Founded in the year 1936, Brahmakumaris has activities in more than 110 countries across the globe. With its headquarters located in Mount Abu, Rajasthan, India, the Brahmakumaris World Spiritual University is a socio-spiritual, non-governmental organization, NGO, with affiliations in many UN bodies. It started with affiliations in the year 1980 with the UNDPI, United Nations Department of Public Information, followed by affiliation from ECOSOC, observer status in UNFCCC, UNCBD, UNEP, and recently in UNCCD. COP and COIS. Brahmakumaris delegates participate actively in these events for providing spiritual dimensions to decision-making, action planning, and helping to obtain a more holistic approach. Brahmakumaris is also an active member of Green Interfaith Dialogues. In 2011, Brahmakumaris and World Renewable Spiritual Trust were recognized by the Ministry of Science and Technology as a scientific and industrial research organization. India One Solar Thermal Power Plant is one of India's largest solar projects with a capacity of 1 megawatt. It is functional since 2017. On an institutional level, Brahmakumaris are the largest users of solar energy. Stands to be one of the oldest organizations to work with solar energy in the country. The journey with solar energy started long back in 1996 with the installation of modular solar cooking systems. Soon, more research led to the use of solar energy in various activities like water heating, cooking more than 40,000 meals a day, using solar in almost all day-to-day activities. 350 solar photovoltaic battery systems of a total capacity of 1.4 megawatt peak were installed in different branches of the organization. The Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, and United Nations Development Programme sponsored an awareness and training center on solar energy in Shantivan campus in 2014. The Brahmakumaris have shared its best practices with other organizations to equip them with solar power. Sustainable Yogic Agriculture is an ongoing research program in which traditional organic farming with interventions of Raja Yoga meditation is being studied by many agricultural universities in the country. It has been recognized by the Government of India. Tapovan, a 100-acre dedicated farming land, is being used for the research to help farmers deal with growing agricultural issues. For more than 10 years, we have taken care of nearly 20 parks in Mumbai. Our very own Peace Park in Mount Abu is home to thousands of varieties of flowering plants. Our lifestyle, discipline of vegetarianism, is also a way of decreasing our carbon footprint. Brahmakumari's Gyan Sarovar Academy for a Better World was presented to Habitat 2, the second United Nations Conference on Human Settlements held in Istanbul, Turkey. It was recognized as part of the Best Practice Initiative for Human Settlements. Our vision is for individuals, governments, and global corporations involved in the environmental decision-making process to root their work in the universal spiritual principles and thus bring harmony, clarity, calmness, stability, and power to their thinking and interactions. It is the aim of the Brahmakumaris to highlight the relationship between our awareness and the technology we choose. We believe that a holistic approach based on peace, cooperation, and love is the key to a sustainable future. Everyone, good afternoon and good evening. And before we begin this program, we would like to invite you all to join us in a moment of silence where one of our friends, Raghav, is going to play a beautiful piece of music. So maybe have Raghav, please.
Shanti, thank you.
Thank you very much, Raghav, for that lovely piece of music. Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to today's program. I should say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone because there's so many of us who have joined in from different parts of the world. And my name is Srinidhi. I'm your host for evening. I am a radio jockey by profession. And of course, I do wear multiple hats. And I also have my co-host with me, David. Hello, David. Welcome.
I'm over here. I'm a dentist by profession, but I'm over here in Leeds, north of England, UK, very close to the Headingley Test cricket ground for those in India, I think. Very pleased to be with you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to all of you who have joined in, and there are so many of us who are watching this on YouTube and on Facebook pages. Welcome to all of those as well. This is a part of an independent dialogue that is in support of the United Nations first initiative, first of its kind, and this is called as the United Nations Food Systems Summit. And the main summit is supposed to be held in September 2021. And this is an independent dialogue where we are supporting the UN Food Systems Summit. And this is an independent event organized by the Brahma Kumaris and hosted by the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative. The agenda is everybody's thinking about it. It's saying, why are we here? One of the reasons why we are organizing this is because we all understand where we stand today in world. And before we go on to the main theme of today's program, David, I heard that you are a dentist by profession, but you've started growing recently. What have you grown and why do you start growing?
It's true. I've been vegetarian for ages, and so I've grown a few vegetables, which are obviously organic and chemical free. You know what's going into them, or in this case, what's not going into them. I started doing that actually when I was a student for my mental well-being to relieve stress, and it kind of carried on through. What has it taught me, and what do I love about it? You know, I love watching seeds grow. I think there's something magical about growing seeds. And the other thing is, what I've noticed when I start putting your hand into the soil, it's reconnected me back to the earth, literally, and it's reconnected me back to my food. I mean, I've always been quite mindful, but it's reconnected me back to food, and I would say it's deepened my respect for nature, and it's helped me respect myself deeper and respect others. And the rest of the story, I think, is another session.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. In the last year and a half, we've all seen COVID-19 pandemic has led to vulnerability and challenges that faced collectively as humanity across the world. And we saw that food and related systems have further been suffering. And this requires for us to reorient ourselves, our actions, our strategies, our specific coping skills. How do we want to farm? How do we want to continue with our agri-food systems? Everything from production to distribution to our consumption, everything is being questioned. And now, at this point where we stand today, the United Nations have brought in
an amazing initiative where we could rethink, re-strategize on what do we want to do now? How do we take it further? Do we really need to change something? And this is the turning point where the world stands today. And the UN recognizes that food is an essential part of our lives. And how do we go about dealing with it? What is our awareness about it? What is our understanding about the problems that we face? And how do we set a course to solve them and radically change the ways that we work around food? And that is something, the food for thought, that will come for this discussion. And we have brought in an amazing set of people who are on the panel today. And I would like to welcome and introduce our panelists to you. First and foremost, I would like to welcome Sister Jayanti. Sister Jayanti is the European Director of the Brahma Kumaris, and she has also been a leading light and luminary for generations now as a teacher and a student of meditation that she calls herself. For the over past 60 years of her life, she has dedicated herself to the cause of bringing this light of meditation and spiritual understanding to the betterment of the world. She is also the permanent representative of the Brahma Kumaris to the United Nations in Geneva. Sister Jayanti, welcome to the program. David, may I invite you to introduce our next guest?
You can. Oh, yes, it's David. Sorry. I think that's David Fletcher. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, it's David. Welcome, David. David is based out in Canada, and if I go through all his, like most of our speakers, all his bios, will be here for quite a. We will be here for quite a while. But he's essentially, David's been a social justice educator and advocate for over 30 years, and he's worked with community groups, universities and NGOs in Canada and many countries in Africa and Asia. And I know his current research interests are in Indigenous knowledges, which I find fascinating, community resilience and food sovereignty. So I know David has a huge wealth of practical experience to bring to the table today.
Thank you. Welcome, David. And our next guest for today's event is Gopal Patel. Hello, Gopal. Welcome to the program. Gopal has been a faith-based environmental activist, campaigner, and consultant for over 10 years now. He's worked across continents in India, in East Africa, Europe, North America. As a recognized global leader in religious environmental movement, he works regularly with religious and spiritual communities in addressing our current environmental crises. He is also the co-founder and the director of Bhumi Global, a non-profit organization that works to educate and mobilize Hindu communities globally for environmental action. He also currently serves as co-chair of the United Nations Multi-Faith Advisory Council and is the member of the advisory board of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Born and raised in England, he currently lives in New York. Welcome once again, Gopal.
Pleasure to be here.
And last but not least, Pramisha Tapalia, if I hope I pronounced that right, Pramisha. Pramisha's doing a lot of work with young people. She's the global focal point of SDG2, so the Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is to do with zero hunger. She's in the major group, the Consistency for Children and Youth, and her work seems to be around climate change, agriculture, food, and youth mobilization. And I can see you also co-lead Youngo, agricultural working group, and you're a youth ambassador of Real Food Systems. So you're really here to represent the youth, Pramisha. So a big welcome to you. And I believe you're originally from Nepal, but you're in America now. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Pramisha. I think just to start up and to warm you all up a little bit, we have a little bit of fun questions. We do not want it to be a serious conversation. And many people do assume that this is going to be very serious. No, it is not. So we have some warming up questions for everybody in the audience as well, and to our panelists here. Of course, our panelists would answer on the screen, but all of you who are in the audience can type your answers in the chat box for the question. So the first question that we have, I believe it's the only question to start with as an icebreaker, would be, what is your favorite fruit or vegetable and why? Do not take more than, let's say, 30 seconds to think about it and answer. There is one answer that came in, mango, very quickly. What feeling does it evoke in you? Not just one question, it's a question complemented by other. What feeling does it evoke in you? Sweet, very nice. Yash says sweet, okay. I think I would put this question to Sister Jayanti now. And Sister Jayanti, what is your favorite fruit or vegetable? And what is the feeling that evokes in you?
I was actually going to say mango also. And it evokes in me the feeling of warmth, of sunshine, of sweetness and family, because mangoes are shared with everyone. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Gopal, what would be your fruit or vegetable that you like the most, and what feeling does it invoke?
Well, I could say mango, but with so many people of Indian origin, it's obvious we're going to have mango as a main answer. I would say cherries. I think cherries, they're so small and impactful, but there's so much flavor in them and so versatile. You can use them in baking and sweets and different things like that. And also because they're not so available in India. So I like the fact that cherries are so kind of unique, to the North America and Europe. So cherries are my favorite.
Yeah. Thank you. Next question goes to David Fletcher.
Strawberries. And I think I say that because here in Canada, strawberries are just coming into season. And the best strawberries in the world are from a place called Great Village, Nova Scotia, which is where my father grew up. So every time I have a strawberry, I enjoy the taste and I remember my father.
Thank you, David. I think we could put the same question to Pramisha. David, yeah?
Oh, yes. Off you go, Pramisha. Sorry about that.
I just posted in the chat. I love watermelon because I feel that it not just refreshes my body, but also mind and soul after eating watermelon, and also reminds me of my memories with my siblings during my childhood. So watermelon is my favorite food.
Oh, thank you. And I think there's some other people have also mentioned watermelon in the chat. There is Bharati who says lychee, and the feeling that brings into her mind is refreshing. And Debbie says it is strawberries, just like David Fletcher. Many people come up with mangoes. Somebody said jackfruit. Wow. And banana, and the feeling that evokes is a sense of giving. Wow, there's so many answers. I think I can go on reading, but we would take it further. Like a fun question, it was all quick for us to think about our favorite fruit, and immediately we could connect it to the feeling that it brought to us. This is what food does to us, especially when it comes from the natural source, when it is in the natural form. We all have associated memories like this. But when we come to today's summit, when we wanted to come to be the part of this program, all of us had something in the back of our minds. Let us see what our panelists had in their minds when they came. So I would ask this question to Sister Jayanti. When we came here, why are we here? What is the purpose of we being part of this summit? Why are we hosting this dialogue? And what is our understanding of food systems?
I know that food systems involve so many things, from the plantation to the harvesting to the storage, transportation, is a whole slew of things. But my interest in the subject is primarily because I see food as something sacred, something that nature has provided for us. Whatever it is that we do to it is then whatever, but it's a fact that all food ultimately comes from nature. And so it's to remind us of the sacred aspect of our life, I think.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. David, would you like to put forth the same question to David Fletcher, I believe.
Yes, David, right. David, so from one David to another David. Why are you here? What's your interest?
I think the same as Sister Janti said, you know, the sacredness of food is something very special. I care about food because it's something that I put in my body to nourish me and give me energy. I care about the planet and the land and the water and the sun that provides the possibility for food to grow. And I realize more and more all of those interconnected systems, as Sister Janti mentioned, that are in place to get the food from the soil to a place where I can put it in my body. And some of those systems are very positive ones, and some of them I think need to be shifted. They can be changed. So I care about food and food systems.
Thank you, David. I think, Gopal, it's your turn now.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about this morning, and you know, one phrase came to mind. We are what we eat, and we say that often. We are what we eat. And then another phrase came to mind, which is real wealth is health. And I think what we see across the world is that our food systems are broken in so many ways. As Sister Jainty said, you know, there's the plantation, there's the harvesting, there's the transportation. But if you look at all those components in their totality, they're severely unjust, unfair, damaging to the environment, harmful to people, harmful to the planet. And so in order to have healthy people, our food systems need to be healthy and wholesome. And we know that change begins from inside. We need to start with a consciousness shift, a consciousness change, if we want to see an external change in the world. And so that's why I'm here to have this conversation about how to shift the inner understanding of food so that the external food systems can be reformed.
Thank you, Gopal.
Beautiful. So, Pramisha,
Thank you, David.
let me hear from you.
Yeah, in my opinion, basically we live around food, and food is life to me, and it's interconnected with many things, as our previous speaker said, with nature, soil, family, culture, health, and many more. Food system comprises a lot of things that comes from farm to our table, and there are stakeholders, and there are a lot of components inside. And as Gopal also mentioned, our current food systems is broken, and it is fragile, weak, and vulnerable. It was weak since many beginning, but COVID-19 pandemic showed us how broken and unsustainable our food system is. So I realized that we need to do something to shift from unsustainable food systems and transition to sustainable food systems. And in this, so we need to care about our food system. So I'm here to discuss around it and to brainstorm on how to transition our consciousness to our food systems, sustainable food systems. Thank you, David. Back to you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Pramisha. David, I think that gives enough food for thought that what are we going to do for the next hour or so. And I think we've already set in a course of action that we all want to take. We all have certain things that are going on in our minds, and we want to find answers. At the same time, we also want to ask the right kind of questions to ourselves, questions to people out there, probably to everybody who is around us. There is something that we could all do. But the first question that I would want to put forth is about consciousness. That there was this term that came in that said that we should be conscious about our food. Sister Jayanti, the first thought that came to my mind is, what is the connection between food and consciousness? If there is a connection, why is it so important? And many people are saying that we should shift the consciousness now to, in order to take care of our planet, to take care of our food and our food systems. If at all, if we were supposed to do that, what would that shift look like?
Well, firstly, let me just explain that there's an interaction of mind and body continually. And of course, body then means that I too am part of nature. This body is made up of the elements of nature, not just nature around me, but this is also nature. And so what I eat is going to impact my mind. We know that. And also what we don't always realize is that whatever is going on in the mind is going to impact my body. A simple example, why do you remember the food that your mother cooked? You're getting the same food somewhere else maybe, but it doesn't taste quite the same. But it was the consciousness of love that the mother food put into the food. And of course, that's what made it so special. And you remember it the whole of your life, however old you get. So there's a direct link there, mind and body connected together through food. And I think that what's happened in recent times is that a huge amount of greed has come into the whole system. And I'm not talking about greed for food. That's a personal, private matter to deal with. But I'm talking about greed for money, for commercialization, for productivity. I'm talking about the way that people store and hoard and sell at prices when things are difficult. I see that greed has become such a huge part of the whole system of the chain of food that it's become a very corrupt system. Mahatma Gandhi said, there's enough for everyone's need, but not enough for any one person's greed. And it's a tragedy of our times that in this age of technology, where we have so much information and so many facilities, yet we have not just malnutrition, but we have starvation for a large proportion of the human family. And that hurts me. And so I think that, what can I do about it? How can it change? Well, I think that firstly, can I have specific things that I decide to do in my own life? And that would remove any aspect of violence from my mind, or it would go a long way towards that. So let my source of food be non-violent, which means it should be plant-based. My food and my drink, plant-based. That's something that all of us can do if we understand the value of this. And the other thing that I think we can do to shift all of this is really to have that consciousness that we are in the same boat. If one part of the boat has water coming into it, how long is it going to take for it to reach the rest of the boat? We are not isolated in our countries. If you go up above and look down below, there are no borders. The photographs of planet Earth from NASA showed this very, very clearly. When we first received them, we were absolutely awestruck by the beauty of the planet. But we've divided it up and carved it up in so many different ways. And so to come back to that awareness of one family, and to be able to have the consciousness of caring and sharing, knowing that today it's malnutrition and starvation in one part of the world, but how long is it going to take for everything to topple down and the same thing to happen here? And in fact, it actually is happening. London's supposed to be one of the G7, the richest countries of the planet. And yet what we are finding is that there's starvation and malnutrition here also. So it's not isolated, it's not far away in some little island somewhere, but it's happening all over the world. We don't get the news so much sometimes, but it is a reality. And it's only through a shift in our awareness, our consciousness, and coming back to that awareness of one family, that we're going to be able to say, this cannot continue. We have to make a change, and we're the ones who can do it.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. That was very beautiful, and I think this makes us all think. David, what do you think? Do you think that this is something that you had it in your mind? Because this was not something that I was thinking about. Because I thought that, yes, poverty or hunger is a problem somewhere in the underdeveloped parts of the world. But what really came out, what Sister Jayanti just now said, makes it a global issue. It is something that it is happening everywhere.
I think that must be for David in Canada, because that's a very hard question for me to answer.
David?
Yeah. Yes. I was listening for the other David's answer. I was very curious how he would respond to that question. I think, you know, I've had the opportunity over the years here in Canada and in different countries on the African continent to work in the food sovereignty movement, work with farmers and organizations of farmers, work with social justice people who care about the choices that they're not allowed to make about their food system. And I think as farmers, people who produce the food, it's very important that they have the opportunity and the right over how they use their land, how they use the seeds that their communities have probably been protecting for generations, how they access and take care of the water that's often been provided bountifully in their area. But unfortunately, the food system that's been created in the world, and Sister Janti referred to it with the borders that have been created, there's also ownership that's been created. Ownership of land, ownership over water, ownership over the seeds that we want to grow and share with our neighbors and have other people grow because it's our favorite kind of mango or our favorite kind of strawberry. And I think, you know, we often think about food as what we consume and how that food brings energy and sustenance to our body. And we can put more positive energy into the food and sustenance we put into our body. But when we look out at the planet and all the other people in the planet that we're interconnected to, what's the kind of energy we hope will go to them? You know, the energy in terms of respect for the people that are producing and harvesting the food. The kind of energy we want to send out of happiness and enjoyment so that we're sitting around the table with friends or family and enjoying a nourishing meal together, rather than maybe sitting in front of the television or sitting with our fork in one hand and our mobile in the other hand as we're consuming our food. You know, so I think from that individual morsel we put in our mouths to looking at the whole system that's been created around us, food is something really important. And I think that consciousness about understanding the system and how it works, and understanding that we have an influence on that, just as that has an influence on us. And that means there's choices we have to make about how we interact with food.
And the other thing, David, is that people are actually, perhaps more so in the West here, are actually making choices of what they want to eat and what they want to put in. It's a different kind of choices to what you're talking about, which is very close to the earth. But people are becoming, I would say, becoming much more mindful of what food is, how it affects the body, and its impact on the environment and stuff. Yeah. No, I think, Srinidhi, I think we might be slightly out of sync with questioning. So
I think that is something that David put out very well. These are times when many people are making choices consciously. They are trying to shift. Many people, more and more people are growing organic. More and more people are consuming organic food. Many people are becoming vegetarians. More people are becoming vegans. So the shift is there. There is a change that is already happening. But I understand that there is a challenge in terms of when we look at people as a whole, as a whole planet wanting to make a shift. But before we go on to the next question, Gopal, if there is a question that if you would like to ask to one of our panelists or anyone, if you would want to choose, would you like to point it out to someone?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'd actually love to ask Sister Jayanti, if I can, a question picking up on a few of the points she made. And this is building on, we just did a number of dialogues on faith and food. We did 5 dialogues for each of the action tracks for the summit. And one thing that came out was we talked about like the culture wars that are going on right now in the world, and how food is now becoming part of the cultural wars. And so like here in the US, where I'm based, you know, if you're a West Coast liberal, if you're a coastal liberal elite, then you're for plant-based diets. And if you're someone who lives in the heartland of America, then you're for your hamburgers and, you know, your everything coated in, you know, sugar and so on like that. And we're seeing how food is being politicized in that way. And we see we're living in an age of polarization where people are really, you know, really strong on where their stance is. And so Sister Jayanti, because you spoke about the need for shifting to plant-based diets and more consciousness, and, you know, you've had many decades of experience helping people become more conscious about who they are and the decisions and how they show up in the world. How do we navigate these conversations? Because also, as you said, food is so sacred and personal. We, you know, 3 times a day, we make a very personal decision about what to put in our body. So how to have those conversations with people who may be reluctant or scared to change their habits when it comes to food, because it is such a part of their identity and culture. I'm just wondering if, I know it may be a difficult question, but I think you're probably the best person to answer that on our panel. So I'll ask that to you, please.
You're absolutely right, Gopal. It has become a highly political issue. But I think that if we point out that we're suggesting this, and it's only a suggestion, it can never be a dictate to anybody else because it's my personal choice. And if we point out that it's for health reasons, there's a lot of information available that plant-based diet is good for health. And the other just really isn't. You don't know what sort of chemicals, poisons, hormones you're putting into your body. And the second is, if we think about the planet and the future of the planet, again, I think there's a very strong case to be made for this. If we think about water and the resources that we have that are very, very precious, again, that becomes a very important factor. You know, then of course, there's the aspect of violence and non-violence and what that does. You know, here's an animal that's very scared at that moment, and all those chemicals and hormones I'm putting in here. What's going to be my state of mind? What's going to be happening to my dreams, my nightmares? Where are they coming from? So if one puts across a whole broad range of ideas so that it's not seen as an East-West thing or as a West Coast liberal idea, but really it's something that is the need of the moment for human survival. Really, I would put it as strongly as that. And secondly, if we also say, well, try it for a week, try it for a month and see how you feel at the end of that. So I think not being pedantic about it, not being fundamentalist about it, I think that's a very important part of the whole approach, and just very lightly try it. And also, of course, the other factor is that most people are only just beginning to understand that being plant-based doesn't mean that you have to be chewing lettuce and carrots. There's a huge variety that's available, because I know that people have this impression, but what am I supposed to eat? I don't know what I can eat. But there can be a whole process of learning that goes with that. And I think these are some of the ways in which we can gently put in our pitch.
Thank you so
No,
much.
Sister Jayanti, there's nothing wrong with carrots. I've got one here for my my
Love
afternoon
it.
snack.
Absolutely love it. But
And could I just add something as an addition to that? I've had the opportunity to teach at a small university here in Canada with lots of international students. So they'd be here for 6 months, eat in the cafeteria. It wasn't the kind of food they were used to. But in this situation, they really liked the chicken that was served. in a course that we had, I showed them a video about the industrial production of chicken in the North American context. For many of them, they were from rural parts of Africa and Asia, and they would have 2 or 3 chickens in their house, and they would take care of them, and at a certain time, it might become part of their food source. But it's very different in many more industrialized urban areas of the world. And the production of something like chicken, when you become aware of it and see it, all of these students stopped eating chicken for the next 6 months it was there. So for me, I think what's really important is the sacredness of our food and our connection to nature and our respect for nature. That's the primary thing. And when we go through that change in our awareness, then we make the choices about what we will eat. And most people move then towards a plant-based diet. But the awareness, I think, as others have said, is a very important first step in that process.
Thank you. Thank you, David. That is something that as young people, many people have started thinking about it. We have a person who represents the youth constituency, and Pramisha is with us. Pramisha, if you were to ask a question to one of our panelists, and if there is something that you would want to ask them, anything about what your thoughts are, what is going on in your mind, probably you can put those thoughts on.
Thank you, Srinidhi. It was lovely listening to you, Sister Jayanti, and I'd also like to touch on some points raised by David Fletcher. I think today's younger generation is wiser than any generation, but there also lies significant problems within our generation. We ourselves called us as a digital generation, but it also comes with certain disadvantages. And as David pointed out, the culture of mindful eating has been slowly decreasing because we eat food when hanging on our phone, or reading, or working, and most of the time we don't concentrate on our food these days, and we don't feel our body and mind when we eat our food. So, Sister Jayanti, I would like to ask you, in your opinion, how do you think we can promote mindful eating, especially in this digital era, among children and younger generation?
I think it's very, very important to remind young people and children especially that there is a connection with nature, that food isn't just from the supermarket. It doesn't come in packages. Some children in cities have never seen rabbits running around or cows eating grass or any of these things. And so I think that a very simple way would be to make it part of the curriculum, to show children and even young, say teenagers, the connection between what's here on my table and what's out there in nature. And so an expedition out into the country to make them aware that these are living animals we're talking about, but also these are the plants that we're actually feeding from. I remember being so excited when, as a young child, I would go and pick an apple from a tree, because I'd only seen apples in boxes and cartoons and plastic bags. But to actually pick an apple from a tree was very exciting. And so till today, I treasure that moment, when wherever I am, if I get that opportunity, I'm picking something personally rather than just buying it. It's a very different feeling. And I think that brings back that sense of sacredness, but also just telling them, take a moment to pause and be grateful that nature has provided this. Be grateful that you're lucky enough to have a plate full of food. And so just give thanks to the universe that you are in this fortunate position. And if you do that, not only will you be sending out good vibrations, but also you'll be preparing your body. And that's a fact. Eating food on the run and sitting quietly and preparing mind and body to eat food is vastly different. And so you're going to be able to not just enjoy it, but actually digest it and it'll give you more energy. So simple things like this that teachers at school and mothers and fathers at home can teach children can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I remember some children like think that rice comes from the packets in the supermarket and milk from the cans. So I think in this regard, changing curriculum and including these stops in curriculum and expedition is very important. Thank you for your insightful thoughts.
Sister Genti, is there anything that you might like to ask of our panelists? I know you do have to leave early because you have some engagements. And we have a little quick fire round of questions for you before you go as well. So we definitely want to get those in because they'll be fun. But it's felt like a very natural conversation up to now. It's been very lovely. But maybe you have some questions for Pramisha or Gopal. I don't know.
I'd like to ask David Fletcher something. The whole thing about the food systems that we have currently is something which is quite corrupt in many different ways. And I know that we're looking at systemic change, and I also know that personal change is what is able to then generate systemic change. That's now, I think, clear to most people. But what would you say is the most important link within that whole chain that we have to work on?
I think the respect for farmers. I think the revalorization is a word that's sometimes used about those who live close to the land or close to the water and produce our food and take the energy that's put into our food. I think if we had a better understanding that that is where the system, the structure starts, it would be really helpful in then putting the kind of sacred energy back into those people. Often the same people that have the highest rates of malnutrition are the farmers and the people who produce food in the world, because we've established a system so that the consumers get the best value for their dollar in terms of food. Often the producers are the last ones to benefit from the food they produce. So if we can reverse that system and respect the farmers, respect the producers, and let them be involved in the kind of system that they think will make a difference. You know, at a local level, we don't need to have food shipped all the way over the world, but at a local level, how can the farmers be involved in making decisions about the kind of system and structure we have as a food system?
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm looking at the time, and I know Sister Genti does needs to leave shortly, and so I'm really keen we're getting these little fast, rapid fire questions for you, Sister Genti. I must admit, it does remind me of TV quiz programs, this, but okay, anyway. So I understand the idea behind this is you sort of answer with a word or two, or a phrase or a short sentence. So this is, so what is good food for you?
Good food is that which is filled with good vibrations, filled with love, and I enjoy eating it.
Wonderful. Okay, so when you think of the earth as our mother, what comes to mind?
Generosity. The earth has been extremely generous and given us so much and continues to give.
Okay. How would you put simplicity into your eating?
Instead of having 5 varieties of food, can I make it 3 varieties? And can I then even perhaps make it 2 varieties. I think that will make a big difference.
Great. Okay. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like vegan cheesecake?
9.
9.
That was
Okay.
easy.
That was easy. And one final question. Would you be prepared to share one of your beautiful meditations with us before you leave? And we'll perhaps get, I hope that's a yes.
Yes, indeed. You tell me when and we can have that.
Well, I think looking at the clock, it would be nice to do that now. So we make sure we get that in, because our other panelists can stay for longer. So it would be lovely to have a short meditation. We've been talking about food for the body, but there's been a lot of content about food for the soul. So that would be very, very lovely if you could guide us for a couple of minutes.
Yes, sure. And I just want to offer my apologies to the other panelists, especially, but today happens to be a day which is our sacred day for the mother of our organization, the day that she flew away. And so there's a lot of things going on, and this is being squeezed in between all of that. So thank you for your understanding. Sitting quietly, filled with gratitude for all that nature has provided, and experiencing the warmth and love from all aspects of nature that support us and nourish us and allow us to move forward. Going deep inside myself, I ask the question, I have taken so much from nature. What can I offer back in return? And the response comes, I can offer love, I can offer peace. So I send out loving thoughts to earth, water, fire, ether, air, and as I send out those vibrations of love, I can feel my connection with each of these elements growing. I also send out my thoughts of peace. My thoughts of violence created upheaval in nature, and now my thoughts of peace and love can help to heal nature. And in this awareness of the being that I am, the eternal being of light, my deepest wish is to restore harmony between the inner being and nature itself. I hold this in my awareness. I come back here and now aware of all the gratitude that I have for nature. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you so much, Sister Genti. We ended on the gratitude, and we'd like to thank you so much for finding the time, because I know this is a full day for you. And I'm just taking away some of the points you're particularly emphasizing about the importance of our thoughts, and this point about how important it is to return to a sacredness in relationship to our food. So thank you once again, and we'll hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you for your contribution. It's been very, very valuable. So, so I think that concludes our first part, because we had to let Sister Genti go. I was actually a little bit surprised when she was able to fit in an hour, on knowing that the importance of the of 24th of June in the Brahma Kumaris calendar. So that was wonderful. Now, Srinidhi, I believe you've got something interesting now for our audience, and I think you're going to conduct a poll. Is that right?
Yes, I believe there is so many questions that we have asked, and our panelists have asked each other, and it's time that we ask questions to our audience as well. We have around 60 people who are in the audience in the Zoom room, and there's so many more who are watching it on YouTube and Facebook and other platforms. So to start with, maybe have the poll for the audience. It is a fun quiz for everyone. So it's there on the screen. So we want all of you to answer very simple questions, not the difficult ones that we asked to our panelists, but yeah, just to tickle our brains a little bit so that we start using our hands and do a little bit of clicking around. So these are the questions for you. So the first question says, do you eat just because it is time to eat? A yes or a no question, so it is fairly simple. So you can choose the answer. You could choose to answer by just answering the poll, the options that are available. You could just use click options. And then the second question is, our good feelings can enrich our food? Yes, no. I think with what Sister Jayanti just now said, I know what is the answer, but you can choose your answers though. Question 3. What additives should we put in our food? This is a multiple choice. Of course, you could choose any one of the answers. Chemicals to preserve the food. A. B. Positive consciousness to purify the food. Sorry, I missed out on that one. B was colors to make the food look nice. Of course, it's important that the food looks nice. C was positive consciousness to purify the food. D, artificial sweets and extra salt so that it tastes good. And the fourth question is, what is nature's role in our food systems? Providing resources for human process. All our food comes from nature. Supply materials for agri-business profits. And D, nature helps production and takes our waste. Question 5, what values are most useful in our food systems? A, respect for farmers and primary producers. B, financial value. C, peace and happiness for those who cook. And D, conservation and sharing. Question 6, our thoughts, words, and actions have an impact on the quality of food. True or false? Fairly simple. Question 7, being mindful of our food choices can make us A, physically healthier, B, emotionally stronger, C, I think emotionally stronger again, and all of the above. Question 8, being conscious consumers of food means to eat food that has the best advertisement, or only buy food that is colorful and hygienic in packing. C, becoming aware of how the food gets to our plate and the food system's impact on the people and the environment. And D, knowing where to get fast food when we are busy. The last question is, what do you include in your diet? What would your everyday diet look like? Your plate would have A, vegetables, fruits, and grains. B, vegetable, fruits, grains, and milk. C, vegetables, fruits, grains, milk, and fish. And D, vegetables, fruits, grains, milk, fish, and meat. I think those were some interesting questions, and I believe they were easy to answer as well. We'll give you another 30 seconds to go. Is that okay? If you need a little bit of more time, you could use the hand raise options, just as to give us a fair picture of where we stand, if you'd require a little bit of more time answering those questions. Almost time for us to finish the poll, and we move on to the second part of the program. Thank you very much for being with us. We have another 30 minutes on our hand, and we want all of us to be involved. If you have any questions for our panelists, you could type it in the chat box, and we will pick those questions up and ask those questions to our panelists as well. So all the people who are there in the audience, all our friends, can ask their questions. Moving on, we have a very short video message by Dr. Iyad Abu-Mogli. Dr. Iyad Abu-Mogli is the founder and the director of the United Nations Environment Programme's Faith for Earth initiative. He has more than 35 years of experience with international organizations, the private sector, and the scientific institutions. His expertise focus has been on strategic planning, sustainable development, natural resource management, knowledge and innovation, and interfaith collaboration. Before joining the UNEP, he served for 14 years in the United Nations Development Programme. So he has sent in a small video message for all of us. So let us have the video message by Dr. Iyad Abu-Mogli, please.
I think the video message would be played shortly. We can move, I'll give you an instruction when.
Yeah, thank you. We'll come back with the video message. I think we have a fair amount of answers for our polls. Thank you so much for putting that in. 37% of people said yes, they would just eat because it is time to eat, whereas 63% of our audience have responded that no, they're very conscious about when they want to eat their food. Of course, after listening to Sister Jayanti and the meditation, David, I believe majority of people said that good feelings can enrich our food. It's 96%. No surprises there. And what additives should we add to our food? 100% people said that positive consciousness that purifies the food. And here comes an interesting one. What is nature's role in our food system? 78% responded by saying all our food comes from nature. Very good. And question 5 says varied answers is option number A, C, D. What values are most useful to our food systems? And our thoughts, words, actions have an impact on the quality of our food. 100%. Everybody said it's true. Many of our friends, 93% of our friends said that being mindful of our food choices make us physically healthier and emotionally stronger. Being conscious of food means we are aware of how the food gets to our plate and its impact on people and the environment. And the last question, 48% said vegetables, fruits, and grains on the plate. Another set of majority of people said vegetable, fruits, grains, and milk. Thank you so much for putting all those efforts and answering those questions. Thank you so much, friends. And moving on to the next part, before we get to the video, we'll have the video in a short while. I would like to ask a question to David Fletcher. Friends, if you have a question for David, you can also put that in the chat box. I'll take it up. David, we heard from Sister Jayanti, and this is something where what Sister Jayanti asked you as well. How do we really create a sustainable food system? Because where we stand today, we know that there are things that we need to change, we need to work on. How do we really create a sustainable food system? What is our contribution? How could a common person, from a consumer's point of view, from an end user's point of view, how do we really do that?
Thanks for the question. I mean, there are so many ways. We could go on for a very long time, I think, talking about this, and other panelists and other people who are listening in probably have lots of ideas. I've often been inspired by a woman by the name of Joanna Macy, who's written a lot about this time in the world, the time of the Great Turning. And she talks about food and about climate change and other issues, and really challenges us to think about the actions we can take that will make a difference. You know, stopping some of the negativity that's going on in the world, the things that we see that we know is not appropriate, that is breaking down the system, as Gopal talked about. You know, creating the alternatives. I mean, that video that was shown at the start of this session from Gyan Sarovar of 40,000 meals a day being cooked with solar steam energy. I mean, that's an alternative for us to think about. But the third thing, and probably the most important thing that she talks about, is changing our consciousness, learning to think about things in a different way. And that's thinking about the impact we have, like so many people have answered positively, thinking in a different way about the food we consume, but also changing our consciousness and our understanding about the food system. Is it a system that we support, where we know the high energy that it takes to produce food on a mass basis, with the extra input of fertilizers, the extra input of energy in different ways, the long transportation for food to get to our table in very distant parts of the world? Is that the kind of food system we want to have? Or do we want to have a food system that's more locally controlled, that involves the farmers in making decisions about things, as I've said before, that uses the natural energy of the earth or renewable energy of the earth, that lets people protect and use their own seeds, that works with the natural cycles of nature, rather than trying to control nature and produce things in a way that's not natural and not harmonious with nature. So I think to have a sustainable system, we need to recognize we are part of the system, that there's these huge interconnections between the system. But the interconnections that have been supported for the last 100, 150 years are actually causing us ill health and causing inequities in the world. And we need to look at holistic connections between ourself and nature, between other people that work in different parts of sowing and harvesting and growing and cooking and preparing food, and finding a way to work in an interconnected, harmonious way with them and with nature, to create a system that will really sustain us in a different kind of way. So I think it's that change in consciousness that's the first step. And then we have to ask ourselves some of these challenging questions about what do we want?
Very beautiful. There is one question from the audience for you, David. This comes from Julia, and she says that she would like to know more about your work and learnings from the indigenous people, because this is something that has been your area of work. What were the key learnings that you had from the indigenous people of this planet?
I mean, one of the things that came to mind when Sister Janti was speaking was about the sacredness of food. And sometimes we think, well, okay, the sacredness of food means we take a minute for a prayer before we eat the food, we consume the food. But thinking about the sacredness of food, you know, in a lot of my work in the northern part of Ghana with the Dagara people, at every step of the food production system, there is a ceremony. There is a sense of gratefulness, interaction with the land and the soil and what it's going to provide, an interaction with the water and gratitude and thankfulness for the water that will help the crops to grow. There's a real protection and an honoring of the seeds. And as you go through the steps of the production process to harvesting and processing, etc., there's a real recognition of the power and the beauty and the bountifulness ultimately from Mother Nature that is now coming into our lives. And indigenous people, I think, that live close to the land have held on to those traditions and really, really deeply care about those things. And that's some of the consciousness we need to bring back into our minds and into our hearts.
Wonderful. Wow. This is so nice. It's such a lovely, natural interaction, and I know I'm supposed to do a summary at the end, but I think I'm kind of doing a bit in the middle as well, because it's just, we're just bouncing off each other. I must admit, even though I'm sort of hosting a little bit, I'm very much taken up by the beauty of the conversations. Actually, and I'm just thinking. You know, someone said the actions we take can make a difference. Pramisha, I'm just, you know, because you've got such a expertise with young people, and I'm remembering when I came across Brahma Kumaris, I would have been in your young group, early 20s, in those days, quite a while ago. I'm just wondering, what do you think young people would like to do when it comes to caring for food? So what do you think young people would like to do? And what actions should the younger generation take and actually are taking? So what do you think the young people should do when it comes to caring for food? And what actions should the younger generation take and are actually taking? It would be nice to hear from you on that.
Thank you, David. Yes, 1.8 billion is not a small number, because youth comprises 1.8 billion people in the world, and we know that our generation is wise, works hard, knows where to keep boundaries and whom to keep accountable, and things are changing in different areas around our sustainable development goals. But I see that when it comes to food and agriculture, we don't see a lot of young people involved, although things are changing recently. To your question on when it comes to caring for food and various issues around food systems, I think there are various ways youths can get involved and are also working recently. The first I want to emphasize is education, empowerment, and advocacy, because unless we know the problems, we can't move towards solutions. So awareing the people around you, awareing the young people around you within your organizations or among your family about the current trend and problems around the food systems and around food is the first step that young people could take. Similarly, this dialogue as a part of UN Food System Summit is also one kind of education program itself. So involving in local organizations, awareing people around you, and engaging in different platforms could be one step that young people could take. Similarly, the second one is communication, because we are already seeing the power of social media, and most of the young people are in social media these days. So using our networks and using our thoughts to widely disseminate through that network is quite important. And similarly, there is the power of organizing. From the climate movement, we already saw how can we amplify the youth voices. So organizing young people around you and organizing the people around you around the different topics of food systems could be another way. I talked about advocacy, empowerment, and communication, but in the end, what is most important is action. We have already seen when I interact with a lot of young people in my work, and I've seen lots of inspiring examples from sustainable cocoa production in Philippines to permaculture in Ghana and agroecology-based solutions in another Latin American countries. So there are a lot of grassroots level entrepreneurship that young people are involving in, and we all know that chemical agriculture and industrial agriculture is harming the planet. So young people are showing their example by transitioning to the nature-based solutions, by promoting organic agriculture, agroecology, and also showing the value of local food systems and strengthening local food systems. And similarly, we all have our own potentials, right? Someone is good at writing, someone is good at painting, some young people is good at research. So we need to recognize our own potential, and we can use that potential to advocate in the food systems. If you're good in writing, you can start your blog on food systems and agriculture. If you're good in research, you can pick a research topic and do the research on that own. And if you are good in painting, you can create arts related to the food, and you can show the people around you. So harnessing our own potential in this area is also very important. And another thing that we are really good at doing is mobilization and coordination. At a major group of children and youth also, we act as a bridge between young people at the grassroots level and decision-making process in the United Nations. So we can help to bring the voices of the voiceless in the decision-making areas and in the policy processes, because we talk about these issues, we organize, we communicate, we mobilize, but in the end, if all these issues are not translated into the policy, and if there is no political will, we don't get anything. It all goes in vain. So I think young people's voice also needs to be reached to the policy making processes, and they can advocate about farmers' rights, indigenous people rights, as David said. Similarly, ownership of seed, protecting the rights of the land stewards, because those people who work days and night in the land are the ones who themselves are landless. So young people have recognized that, and they really need to be the advocate of these issues and change the narrative shift. Yeah, I think if young people are actually capable of doing these things, David, because they are not only the future leader, but also the leaders of today. Back to you, David.
No, thank you so much. I just love this thing. Well, they're the next generation, and you know, there's time now, but the whole history of the Brahma Kumar is actually now a lot of the elders have come and gone, but they were all very young. And I mean, I work with young children in a dental setting, so it's a little bit different, but I just find young people so inspiring. And I've had the honor really of sort of working with a sort of a remote group of young people helping to put this day together. And I'm just blown away by how quickly they come up with the ideas and do something, and it's all and you know, for likes of me, I'm thinking, how do we do this? And I'm watching the WhatsApp zip zap zap and something's done, and I think it's just a wonderful energy. And I love to be around young people, so I'm in. Thank you so much for sharing, Pramisha. That was very inspiring.
Thank you, Pramisha. That was something that really stood out for me, that we are not the future. We are not the leaders of the future, but as young people, we are here to act. We are here to do things. We take responsibilities and we do things. And what David said also rings a bell, because we're the people of action. We love doing things, not just sitting and thinking, not planning. But of course, all of that is important. But what is more important is what you think and what you put into action, and how quickly you do that. How does that translate? And you put that very beautifully on the different aspects of how the younger generation thinks and acts and plans to work on these important issues. I think I would have David. We have had Pramisha answer this question. We have Gopal with us, and I would like to put in the last question to him. Gopal, you've been a person who has worked with faith-based organization, interfaith. Your experience teaches you that, of course, faith can make things happen, which is otherwise not so easily possible. If something comes from a faith leader, people would rather accept it and start doing it rather than thinking about how, why, when, is it feasible or not, but because they would just accept it because they would have faith. But then how do we really instill those values into our food system? What Sister Jayanti was talking about was having that kind of respect, having the sense of gratitude. I understand across cultures, we have seen these examples. In India, people also, before they start eating, they would chant a specific mantra. They would take water in their hands and they would put around the plates. In the Islamic cultures, in the Islamic traditions, people would say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before they start eating. In Japan, people would say itadakimasu, and they would hold their hands and they would bend in front of the food. And the approach is there, the things are there. But even people who do not profess faith, they still they have values inside them of respect, of generosity, of gratitude. But how do we instill it in our food systems that it becomes part of people's lives?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question and an important one. And as you said, across traditions and across time and different geographies, all wisdom, religious, spiritual traditions and communities have practices that honor and value and respect food and food systems, and by extension, the natural world itself. And you know, the question around, you know, those of us who may not have a particular faith practice or spiritual tradition, or may dip in and out of it from time to time, you know, as we may do, is I think it's a case of that we may need to make the connection. And I think that's something that's really come out in the discourse today, which is that we are disconnected from our food systems. And if, for example, if you take another example, which is fashion, you know, we see in the last decade or so, people becoming really conscious about where their clothes are coming from, who's making the clothes, what conditions are they making their clothes under, what's the environmental impact of their clothes. And people are moving towards more organic, sustainable clothing, and clothing manufacturers are having to become more responsible about the sourcing of their raw materials and the production life cycle and so on. And so that connection was made a number of years ago. And I think we can look at food systems in a similar way. Food systems are something that they're so ubiquitous, they're all around us, that we don't really acknowledge it, you know, although it's the very thing that nourishes us and sustains us on a daily basis. And so if we come from, I would say, if we come from a particular religious, spiritual, faith tradition, it's about relearning. It's not about learning anything new. It's about relearning what our ancestors, what our grandparents may have lived and taught, you know, which was also part of their DNA. So it's relearning something that we have forgotten if we're coming from a specific faith tradition. You know, for example, in the Jewish community, they have a practice of every 7 years, you do not do any agricultural work. Every 7 years, you let the ground and the earth regenerate before you know, harvest again, and so on. And in, you know, Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism, all the traditions have practices around honoring food. But this point around, if you don't come up from a particular tradition, food systems, as I mentioned earlier, really is the point where every single social issue that we may be concerned of intersects at the point of food and food systems, right? So if we're interested in the environment, well, we know that food systems are damaging to the environment. If we're concerned about human rights, well, we know that food systems exploit people significantly. If we're concerned about health, then we know that the food that we eat is directly related to the health of people and communities. If we're concerned about young people, if we're concerned about women, if we're concerned about racial injustice, for example, here in the United States, you have this terrible concept of food deserts, where in a lot of inner city Black communities, people don't have access to good, healthy food because all the supermarkets in their neighborhoods sell highly processed, high fructose corn syrup rubbish, essentially. So whatever social justice, social issue we're concerned about, and if those are the value systems by which we're living with, we can see all of those intersect with food systems. And so we need to make those connections. You know, we need to make the connections between all those issues and the food, because essentially the food that we're eating 3 times a day or more is going through a chain and is impacting all of these concerns that we have, whether we're a person of faith or not a person of faith. We're all concerned about these things that are going on in the world. And so I think that's the challenge, is to make that connection. And when the connection is made, a conscious, well-meaning person cannot be ignorant of the reality anymore. They have to be compelled to change and to move into a right direction. And so I think that's what I would say, whether we're from a faith or not, we're all concerned, we're all responsible citizens, and we can all make that connection to make a tangible change.
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you so much. I believe we have a round of rapid fire to close with to all of you. And I think before we start with the rapid fire, we have a small video message by Dr. Yadav Mowgli. We'll have the video message first, and we'll come back for the rapid fire. So can we have the video, please?
Sincere apologies for not being able to be online with you for this timely and important webinar, especially being organized by the youth group that we look up to for leading a better future. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to share some quick thoughts. Friends, we increasingly see unsustainable practices concerning food systems around us, extending from unnecessary packaging, unhealthy diets, unnecessary transportation of food across the oceans, and certainly a major issue in generating waste that exceeds 40% of the food we produce. The global population is increasing, and we will exceed 10 billion in 2050. But still, we have one Earth, the same limited amount of water, and same limited agricultural areas to cultivate, unless, of course, we cut more forests and destroy more ecosystems. Over the past 100 years, more than 90% of crop varieties have disappeared, and today just 9 plant species account for 66% of total crop production, contributing to global health risks like diabetes, obesity, and malnutrition. Intensive farming also plays a role in the emergence of zoonotic diseases such as COVID-19. Add to all of this the fact that our food systems account for a quarter of all man-made greenhouse gas emissions. The world spends about $1 million a minute to subsidize agriculture. The demand for food is projected to increase by 60% by 2050. This means that the decisions we make today will have an enormous impact on food security as well as on the environment, economy, health, education, peace, and human rights. Therefore, the global food system must be transformed to achieve two purposes. Firstly, it must ensure food and nutritional security and put an end to hunger. Secondly, it must reverse the degradation that human actions have caused and restore ecosystems. There are many technological processes and good agricultural practices and food systems out there, but would technology alone make the transformative change we aspire to have? I believe an important element is behavioral change and adopting sustainable attitudes towards how we produce and consume food. The 40% of food waste generated can be reduced to zero by changing our behavior. Thus, we will be able to feed 1 billion people who go to bed hungry every night. Who better than religious leaders to lead us towards what our religions command us to do? All religions agree on the prevention of wasting food and having healthy diets, especially plant-based diets that do not only keep us healthy, but also keep the planet healthy too. Thank you again and wishing you a very successful webinar. Stay healthy and stay well.
Thank you. That was a very lovely message and quite inspirational. And these are things that we have discussed today. And one of the things that Dr. Iyad pointed out was about behavioral change. I think that is something that everybody would have a thought about when we leave this evening for after this conversation. So moving on, let us move to the quick rapid fire questions that we have 6 questions for you. We call it Rapid 6. And you can choose, like David said, you can choose a word to answer or a phrase to answer, or you can rather choose a sentence. The same questions will come to each one of you. So we'll start with David, then we go to Gopal, and then we go to Pramisha, because we're following in alphabetical order. And David, your name starts with D, so you come first. Okay, so the first question is, even though it is the question for the panelists, all of our audience can also answer the rapid fire question as quickly as you can chat, type in the chat box. So to the audience as well, whilst we're playing this game. So David, the first question is, what is the one resource that the planet has that can feed the world?
Love.
Gopal?
Compassion.
Pramisha?
Well.
Okay. There are many people who are saying the sun. Wow, very nice. David Goodman, would you like to give it a shot? What is the one resource that the planet has that can feed the world?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
Caught off guard.
Human spirit, energy.
Very nice. Moving on to the second question to David Fletcher. What challenge do you see in the world in achieving zero hunger? David, you're on mute, I believe.
The inability of people to care for their brothers and sisters.
Okay, very nice. Gopal?
I'll say what's being said in the chat, greed.
That was also something that Sister Jayanti said today. Pramisha?
Lack of action.
Lack of action. Wow, very good. David Goodman? I
think lack of focus.
Lack of focus.
And understanding the importance thereof.
Very good. Mala writes in the chat, she says lack of love. Wow, very nice. Very beautiful answers in the chat as well. Coming to question 3. David Fletcher, give us 3 words that can solve the global hunger issues. 3 words.
Caring, open eyes, and personal change.
Thank you. Gopal? 3
These are
words
difficult-
that can
these are
solve
difficult
global
questions.
hunger issues.
I would say love, respect, and compassion.
Wow, beautiful. Pramisha?
Awareness, action, and compassion.
Awareness, action, and compassion. I see compassion is a common word that's coming up. Okay. David Goodman?
Personal responsibility, respect, and I'm going for compassion as well.
Wow, beautiful. Question 4 to David Fletcher. What gives you hope?
Faith.
Very nice. Gopal?
The youth.
The youth. And let's see what the youth has to say. Pramisha?
Same thing, young people.
I give hope to myself. Very nice. David Goodman?
Yeah, trust. I trust humanity. We got ourselves into this mess, so we can get ourselves out.
Wow, very beautiful. The 5th question, what is the one thing you have started doing after your new shift in awareness about food systems?
Growing my own food.
Growing my own food. Wow. Gopal?
I've started buying and going more regularly to the local farmers market on Saturday afternoons.
Very nice. Pramisha?
Buying more organic.
Very good. David Goodman?
Well, I'm growing more, and I have to admit, I've stopped munching if there's a football match on, because now when I pick up any bit of food, whether it's a carrot or an apple or anything, I'm thinking, wow, I can't stop saying, wow, where's this come from? Look at all the sun that's gone into that, and look at all the people. So it's stopped me from going munch, 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 munch. It's made me more aware, I think.
Wow, beautiful. So this is the last one for all of us, and to our friends who are in the Zoom room. One personal change that you want everyone to make, David?
Ask yourself where your food comes from.
Okay. Gopal?
Yeah, I would echo that. Educate yourself and know where the food comes from.
Okay. Pramisha?
Yeah, awareness and aware people around you are aware about what you know to the people around you. That would make a huge shift.
Very good. David Goodman?
Follow your inner conscience about what you know to be right, and put all the other difficulties to one side. Otherwise, we won't do anything.
Wow. I believe some of our friends in the chat box have also written very beautiful thoughts. And I think be conscious of what we eat is something that has come up more and more. Eating more local seasonal food as compared to the processed food, becoming dairy-free, reading ingredients, being aware of what I eat. Beautiful answers. I can go on and on about it. We are just a little over the time that we had been granted, and I believe it is time for us to sum up and take away some messages that have come out of this beautiful conversation that we have had today. And I would request David Goodman to please sum it up for us.
Well, I think I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation to the point where I lost track of when I was supposed to come in. So that's a good sign. And my co-host here didn't tell me that I was supposed to be answering the questions. So that was a surprise as well. So that was very nice. Well, do you know, I've been sort of scribbling through the whole thing, and I've got about 4 or 5 pages here, but you know, the thing that kind of kept coming up, wasn't it, was this this connection to connection. And I sort of wrote, you know, food connects us and we are all connected to food. And it sort of, that sort of stuck out to me. And someone said, you know, we're all in this together, we're all in the same boat. So that gives a sense of compassion, actually, when you understand that you're all in together. There was a very strong emphasis on sacredness and the connection between being mindful, conscious, maybe soulful. I'm not sure if someone mentioned that word. And also this appreciation that change begins from the inside. And so I really appreciated Sister Genti's commentary and stuff and whatever else has been said. And the other big thing that just kept coming out, and I'm very grateful, gratitude, appreciation, and being thankful seem to be a very, very strong thing. And I'm just looking at all of those. It's all free, aren't they? We don't need any complicated systems, because basically I'm just looking at that. All of that is as you said, Gopal, it's coming from the inside. So in a sense, the answer's inside of us. And so really, thanks for everyone turning up, our audience and our friends out there. I feel there's been a nice interaction, and thank you so much, Gopal and David and Pramisha, for pitching up and making such valuable contributions. And I can see one of our young team. I call everyone sort of young to me now, but I can see Raghav and the team behind. There's a lot of thinking and input to put this together, so a big thanks for that. Yes, I think that's it for me, and I'm definitely going to be even more mindful of food. And I've already been telling our lot here at meditation place. I think we should have some more conversations about this. What do you think, guys? So I think picking up what Pramisha was saying, you know, action speaks. We've got to just do something. So it's been a lovely session. For me, I've really enjoyed it, even though I've technically hosting it a little bit, but I've really enjoyed the contributions, and it's been very, very valuable. Very valuable. And I hope you guys have taken away something.
Indeed. I know all of us have taken something from the conversations that have come in, and like David said, it has been a great session just listening to all of you, all of our panelists who put in so much and brought in their expertise of different fields and coming and converging to this one point where all of us have had something to take back home. And we give you a moment of silence where Raghav is here, and he would play a piece of music, flute again, maybe for a minute, just for us to reflect and to bring us back together about what we have gathered today, and a few things that we could distill in our minds and carry the essence forward. So just a moment of silence as we come to close and offer gratitude and reshuffle and set ourselves back. Raghav. Thank you very much, Raghav. It was very beautiful, much appreciated. And thank you everyone for joining in today. And it had been a real pleasure having you all here with us participating, and just the room full of people and so many more watching on social media platforms. It just fills us up with so much of emotion. And I believe many of you have left beautiful thank you messages in the chat box as well. Thank you messages to our panelists, and how you felt and how you wanted to do things for this world, this planet that we call our home. I'm pretty sure all of us would like to keep in touch. There is a last slide for you where you could gather more information about the Brahma Kumari's Environment Initiative. You can also get in touch with our wonderful panelists, David Fletcher, Gopal Patel, and Pramisha Tapalia. And we would have that slide at the end for all of you to have that information for you. You could probably take a screenshot, or if you'd want to just note it down or get in touch with all of our friends who joined us today. So thank you very much on behalf of the Brahma Kumaris and on the behalf of the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative for being part of this wonderful dialogue in support of the United Nations Food Systems Summit. It has been an absolute pleasure and delight to have been conversing with such amazing human beings. Thank you, Gopal. Thank you, David. Thank you, Pramisha. Thank you so much for joining in. And thank you, David, for being a wonderful co-host. And we both have had fun. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yes, thank you. But he's more experienced than I am, because he's a professional jockey. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I've also enjoyed working with you, Srinivas. I appreciate your focus and your clarity and summing up. So that was a nice learning experience for me. But yes, it's been a lovely. I feel quite uplifted by listening to everyone sharing and just seeing that connectedness. And I feel when there is this connectedness, then we can do something, don't I feel that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, David. We leave you on that note, wishing you all a good health and a lot of happiness and love, with gratitude from the Brahma Kumaris family. Thank you so much for joining in, and do take care. Thank you.